Reality is filtered, not fixed. Everything you think you know, your memories, your beliefs, the way you process time, the things you take for granted, might not be what they appear to be. And here's the twist. It's not that these experiences are false. It's that they're incomplete. You're not living inside reality. You're living inside a version of it. Filtered, compressed, and shaped by the tuning dial of your perception. Right now, your awareness is functioning like a frequency receiver. It's locked into a very specific channel, a linear one, where time appears to move forward, where cause seems to create effect, and where your identity feels separate from everything else. But this isn't the only way to tune into existence. It's just the default mode. Let's start with something obvious, yet rarely questioned. Have you ever wondered why certain moments feel like they stretch endlessly, while others vanish in an instant? Or how your brain can recall a childhood smell that transports you across decades in a blink, without warning or logic? These aren't glitches. They are glimpses, evidence that time, space, and perception are not fixed absolutes. They are flexible variables. And when you understand how they function, not as rules but as settings, you gain access to something extraordinary. This isn't just a thought experiment. There are people across history, across cultures, and across disciplines, spiritual, scientific, psychological, who have all tapped into a deeper structure of awareness. A nonlinear, layered, multidimensional structure that allows them to access expanded information, accelerated manifestation, intuitive intelligence, and reality shifts that would seem like science fiction to someone stuck in linear perception. The ability to shift your perception is not a gift reserved for mystics or quantum physicists. It's a skill, and skills can be trained. In this video, we're exploring exactly how to adjust your perception intentionally to see beyond the linear frame that most of us live in unconsciously. You'll learn why your awareness behaves the way it does, how it's currently filtered by biology and conditioning, and how to recalibrate that filter to gain access to higher-order information, quantum time, dimensional overlays, and inner capacities that have been dormant but waiting. Throughout this experience, you'll be introduced to tools, insights, and exercises designed to stretch your perceptual range. You'll gain the framework to begin recognizing when your awareness has been narrowed, and how to expand it at will. This isn't about escaping physical life or floating into abstraction. It's about adding more channels to your perceptual dial, so that you're not just surviving reality, but actually shaping it. Expect to be challenged. Expect to feel curious. Expect to question the most fundamental ideas you've been taught about time, thought, identity, and choice. And more than anything else, expect to walk away with a sense that your perception is not just a lens, it's a tool of transformation. So if you've ever sensed that reality holds more than meets the eye, if you've ever questioned the nature of time, or felt like you were tuning into something beyond, even for a moment, you're exactly where you need to be. Next, we're unpacking the illusion of time and showing you why your experience of it is not just psychological. It's programmable. Time appears simple. The clock ticks. Days pass. One thing leads to another. But beneath the surface of this apparent simplicity lies a far more intricate and misleading reality. Time is not a straight line. It never was. Your brain, your body, and your perception are simply trained to interpret it that way. Start by noticing how your experience of time changes based on attention. When you're bored, time drags. When you're in flow, hours vanish. When you're frightened, milliseconds stretch into eternities. In moments of danger, the brain floods with chemicals that expand your awareness of detail. You begin to see more frames per second. Your mind literally slows down reality so you can respond. This isn't a quirk. It's a signal. Time is not fixed. It bends, warps, and shifts according to your state of awareness. Now let's push further. Consider the research around quantum time. At the quantum level, particles don't behave according to linear time. Events can appear to happen out of sequence. Effects can, under certain conditions, influence causes. This is known as retrocausality, where future states affect present outcomes. This isn't science fiction. Experiments in quantum physics, such as delayed choice or entanglement, reveal that under observation, particles retroactively determine their history. The act of perception doesn't just witness time. It helps write it. You, the observer, are participating in the timeline you experience. Your beliefs, expectations, and awareness do not merely ride along a timeline, they help construct it. So why does time feel so linear in daily life? Why do we experience events in such a rigid order, one thing after another, like beads on a string? Because of how our biology processes it. The brain isn't showing you the full picture. It's presenting you with a reconstructed version of reality, based on limited input, compressed into a manageable stream. Think of your awareness as a spotlight in a vast dark room. The room contains every possible version of time. Past, present, alternate, parallel, but you are only shining light on one pathway. That pathway is linear time. You follow it step by step, not because it's the only route available, but because your current settings are designed to keep you on it. Linear time is practical. It's efficient for navigation, survival, and social coordination. But it's not the whole map. Now consider this: your brain is constantly predicting the future. Every time you walk through a door, have a conversation, or even blink, your mind is forecasting micromoments ahead of your sensory input. This predictive engine isn't just about survival, it's a hint, a clue that your consciousness is already moving ahead of the present moment. So what happens when we begin to explore altered states of awareness? States where linear processing starts to dissolve. In altered states, time distorts. Through meditation, sensory deprivation, lucid dreaming, or focused intention, people consistently report losing track of time, or even seeing time as non-sequential. Some describe a panoramic awareness where past, present, and future unfold simultaneously. This isn't hallucination. It's perception freed from the standard filter. From a practical standpoint, understanding time as flexible gives you a new kind of freedom. If time is a perception, not an external absolute, then how you interact with it becomes a powerful variable. You can expand or compress your experience of time. You can sense future possibilities more intuitively. You can access a form of guidance that doesn't come from memory or logic, but from resonance with timelines your conscious mind hasn't yet caught up to. Many ancient systems, from Eastern philosophies to indigenous knowledge, understood time as cyclical, spiral, or nested. In those frameworks, everything that will happen has already happened, in a sense, and everything that has happened can be revised through new awareness. These aren't metaphors. They're perceptual models that reflect what modern physics is beginning to catch up to. Linear time trains you to think in sequences. Step A leads to step B. Past creates present, present creates future. But quantum time introduces something else. It introduces simultaneity, where multiple outcomes exist at once, where timelines branch like roots and merge like rivers. Your awareness, when calibrated differently, can access this simultaneity. This is not imagination. It's not fantasy. It's perceptual elasticity. The challenge is to stop seeing time as an external cage and start recognizing it as a customizable lens, one that expands or contracts based on the structure of your attention. Let's go even deeper. Retrocausality, the influence of future events on present moments, might sound abstract, but it has real application. The feeling of being guided by an unseen intelligence, or having a gut instinct that proves correct, could be your future self sending data backward through the quantum structure of consciousness. By learning to stabilize altered states of awareness, you can become more sensitive to these signals. You can begin to access information that hasn't yet surfaced in your linear timeline. That's not prediction. That's perception across nonlinear time. This isn't about abandoning physical time. It's about understanding how to work with time consciously, how to manipulate the settings of your own awareness to gain clarity, creativity, and precision. Next, we will explore the hidden architecture behind this quantum awareness, why reality isn't just what you see, but what's coded beneath what you see, and how quantum perception begins to reveal the matrix behind the visible world. You are constantly surrounded by data, energetic patterns, emotional resonances, latent possibilities. Yet, most of this never reaches your conscious awareness. Not because it doesn't exist, but because your perception hasn't been trained to recognize it. Quantum perception refers to the ability to access and interpret these deeper, often invisible layers of reality. It's not mystical. It's mechanical. It has more in common with tuning a radio than waving a wand. You are a sensory being designed to pick up far more than what your 5 primary senses reveal. But you've been conditioned to ignore everything that doesn't match the narrow frequency range of consensus reality. Traditional perception operates like a filter, reducing an infinite stream of information down to a manageable thread. It's optimized for survival, not for clarity. It shows you what you need to function within the world, not what the world truly is. Quantum perception bypasses that filter, allowing you to access higher-order data, subtle energy structures, and nonlinear possibilities. It's a function of consciousness, not intellect. To understand this shift, start by examining the nature of observation. In classical physics, observing something is passive. In quantum physics, observation is participatory. It influences the outcome. This principle, the observer effect, reveals something vital, that perception and reality are entangled. When you observe a quantum system, you collapse a range of possibilities into a specific state. Your awareness determines what becomes real. This isn't metaphor. It's measurement. The moment you focus your perception, the waveform collapses. The possibility field narrows. And here's the key. If that's true for particles, it's also true for thought, emotion, and circumstance. Which means your attention is not just a tool of interpretation, it's a tool of construction. So why don't you experience this more often? Because you're observing from a fixed bandwidth. Quantum perception requires a shift in how you use attention. Not just what you look at, but how you look. It's about relaxing the mind's rigidity and entering a more spacious awareness. One where judgment is suspended, labels are dropped, and intuitive impressions are allowed to rise. In this expanded state, you begin to sense the structure beneath the surface of things. Thoughts carry a charge. Emotions leave energetic trails. Physical environments hum with encoded information. Patterns repeat, not as coincidence, but as part of a larger informational field that reflects back the state of your awareness. That's the invisible matrix. It's not a digital simulation. It's a dynamic network of interrelated energies, unfolding according to resonance, belief, focus, and expectation. And it responds to your perception the way a seed responds to sunlight. This is where quantum perception becomes practical. When you tune into the invisible structures behind events, you begin to see patterns before they solidify. You recognize the momentum of choices. You notice the subtle cues that indicate alignment or resistance. You start navigating reality by feel, not guesswork. Skepticism often arises at this point, rooted in the idea that seeing is believing. But quantum perception flips that principle. Here, believing is seeing. Your expectation sets the perceptual framework, which then determines what is available to be seen. The mind does not passively record reality. It actively constructs it through assumption, focus, and resonance. Now think about how this applies to your personal life. Every decision, every interaction, every emotional state you inhabit is infused with an energetic quality. When you operate from linear perception, you see events as isolated. Cause and effect, good or bad. But when you engage quantum perception, you begin to see the thread, the interweaving of inner state and outer experience. You'll notice how synchronicities intensify, not because more are happening, but because you've tuned into the layer where they occur. You'll sense emotional shifts before they become visible. You'll know when a path feels off, even when all external signs say it should work. This isn't sixth sense. It's refined perception. One of the most profound aspects of this perceptual upgrade is the way it reveals the illusion of separation. In quantum terms, everything is entangled. Events separated by time or space are still connected beneath the surface. That's why your thoughts don't just stay in your mind. They ripple outward, influencing energy fields that interact with others. That's why intention carries power. It alters the informational matrix through resonance. To access this, the first step is stillness. Quantum perception does not arise in mental noise. It surfaces in presence. Attention, uncluttered by analysis, begins to perceive what lies beneath the surface tension of ordinary thought. You start noticing what you were previously blind to: emotional tones in a room, future echoes in conversations, timelines shifting as decisions form. It's not prediction. It's pattern recognition at a quantum level. There is no need for mysticism to grasp this. It is a direct, reproducible shift in awareness. And as your perception sharpens, you begin to function more like a participant in your reality, not just a passenger. Next, we will explore the deeper structural components of this perceptual field, specifically the phenomenon of dimensional overlays, and how you are already interacting with alternate paths, parallel data, and energy signatures far beyond your linear awareness. There are moments in life that feel doubled: an uncanny familiarity, a flicker of something seen before, or a sensation that an event is unfolding differently just beneath the surface. These aren't psychological flukes. They are signals from deeper layers of reality. They point to dimensional overlays. Dimensional overlays refer to the simultaneous presence of multiple versions of reality, layered over the one you typically perceive. They don't exist somewhere else. They're present here and now, superimposed over your current experience, but hidden from standard perception. Think of it like layers of transparency stacked on top of each other. Each layer represents a version of reality, one where different choices were made, different outcomes unfolded, or different energies are dominant. You're tuned into one layer, but the others are still running, still pulsing, still available. The overlay phenomenon explains a host of strange experiences: déjà vu, time loops, flash insights, uncanny dreams that echo waking life. It's not random, it's interference. Energetic crosstalk between timelines. Perceptual bleed-through. This doesn't mean everything is happening all at once in a chaotic swirl. It means there is a deeper coherence, one you can learn to read. Just as a musician hears layers in a chord, you can begin to perceive overlays in experience. It begins with sensitivity to frequency. Each overlay has its own emotional signature, thought pattern, and trajectory. When your awareness sharpens, you start noticing subtle variations in your environment. Certain rooms feel like different worlds. Conversations seem scripted by a higher rhythm. Decisions carry a weight beyond logic. That's overlay resonance. You aren't creating these overlays through imagination. You are perceiving them as energetic constructs that run parallel to your current experience. Some relate to timelines you could have followed. Others reflect collective energies, fields of possibility shaped by group consciousness. And still others may stem from adjacent realities where subtle shifts have already occurred. It's not just your personal life that exists in overlay. Events, environments, and historical moments do as well. An abandoned building, for example, may contain multiple energetic imprints, layers of activity, intention, and memory. When you access overlay perception, you can feel the echoes of those layers. Not symbolically, tangibly. Now, how do you start working with overlays? The first step is permission. You must allow your perception to expand beyond the dominant narrative. This requires moving beyond habitual filters, beliefs that say, only what I see is real, or reality is one path, moving in one direction. Next comes attunement. This is not an analytical process. It's intuitive. When you walk into a space, pause. Feel. Not with your emotions, but with your energetic body. Is there a density, a pull, a sense of presence that doesn't match the surface? Overlay awareness also activates during transition points, moments where your emotional state shifts rapidly, or when you're at a crossroads. At these thresholds, you can sometimes feel both the version of reality you're stepping out of and the one you're entering. The sensation may be subtle: tingling skin, audio distortions, time distortions. Pay attention. These are entry points. Overlay work becomes especially potent when applied to personal decision-making. When faced with a choice, you are often sensing not just outcomes, but energetic templates of those outcomes already in motion. By feeling into these, you can begin to read the timeline attached to a decision. This is how intuitive navigation works at its highest level. You don't need to be psychic. You need to be perceptually flexible. Some overlays contain guidance. They offer glimpses of insights you haven't yet earned in the current timeline. These appear as intuitive downloads, fully formed ideas that arise without conscious construction. They're not products of your past. They're information packets from a version of you that's already integrated a future perspective. This is how overlay perception begins to shape your evolution. It accelerates it. By integrating data from alternate pathways, you compress learning, avoid friction, and move with greater alignment. Now, a common misconception is that overlays create confusion. In truth, it's your resistance to perceiving them that creates the static. When you relax the filter and accept the layered nature of experience, the overlays don't conflict. They harmonize. They provide a multidimensional map, allowing you to orient yourself in far more precise ways. This brings us to application. Once you recognize overlays, you can begin to intentionally shift into the ones that carry the strongest resonance. This isn't fantasy hopping. It's frequency matching. By aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with the overlay that feels most coherent, you anchor that path more deeply into your lived reality. This is the basis of quantum shifting, not by force, but by frequency. Next, we will break down the dial itself, the mechanism of perception, and how it's locked to specific frequencies by your beliefs, focus, and neurobiology. You'll learn how to identify when you're stuck on a limited setting and how to expand it into higher bandwidths of awareness. You wake up every day and tune in to the same reality. The people, the routines, the challenges, they play out on a loop. Some days are better than others. But for the most part, it feels like you're tuned to a single frequency. The volume changes. The song changes. But it's still the same station. This isn't coincidence. It's calibration. Your perception is a dial, a finely tuned selector of frequency. And whether you know it or not, you've been set to one bandwidth, one way of seeing the world, yourself, and what's possible. This dial was shaped by your early experiences, your social conditioning, your trauma, your education, and your daily habits. Over time, it got locked into a setting. That setting controls how you interpret reality. Not just what you notice, but what you don't. What feels normal? What feels unreachable? What feels invisible? Think of a radio that only picks up AM stations. It doesn't matter how many FM signals are out there. You won't hear them, not because they don't exist, but because your device isn't tuned to receive them. Your perception works the same way. It limits input based on a programmed frequency. It filters information through a specific emotional and cognitive lens. And it keeps showing you reality in a way that reinforces your current settings. This is why beliefs are so powerful. They aren't just opinions. They are dials. A belief like people can't change tunes you to a frequency where that appears true. A belief like I always get rejected places your awareness on a track where every cue that matches that belief gets amplified, while contrary data is filtered out. Now here's the key insight. The dial can be changed. But not by force, not by affirmations or surface-level thinking. The dial is connected to attention, emotion, expectation, and embodiment. If you change those elements, you change your frequency. And when you change frequency, you receive a different broadcast. So how do you know what your dial is currently set to? You read the signals around you, the recurring patterns in your life, the emotional themes that seem to loop. The way strangers respond to you, the synchronicities or lack thereof. These are feedback mechanisms. They reflect the frequency you're emitting through your perception. If your world feels repetitive, narrow, or hollow, it's not a sign that life is empty. It's a sign that you're stuck on one station. The dial is multidimensional. It doesn't just determine how you see. It shapes what you attract, what you notice, what you resist, and what you interpret as meaningful. Let's get specific. Emotional frequency is one component of the dial. When you operate from fear, guilt, or lack, You tune your perception toward danger, scarcity, and limitation. Even when abundance is available, your awareness will bypass it. You'll only notice what confirms the lower frequency. Another component is attention. Where your focus goes, your perceptual aperture opens. If your attention is locked on threats, your perception will highlight confirmation of those threats. If it's locked on potential, your mind will begin to show you data that supports expansion. Then there's identity, the most powerful tuner of all. The version of you that you hold in your mind controls what frequency you inhabit. If you see yourself as limited, broken, or unworthy, your perception reflects that. Not out of malice, but out of coherence. The dial seeks internal-external resonance. It aims for consistency, even if that consistency keeps you small. Changing the dial requires interrupting the loop. That interruption can happen in different ways. Sometimes it's through physical disruption, like travel, change of environment, or intense emotional breakthroughs. But more often, it starts with internal defiance. A refusal to keep believing the same thought. A willingness to challenge what feels permanent. When you start questioning your current frequency, you create a gap. And in that gap, a new signal can begin to enter. Practices like focused stillness, breathwork, emotional release, and visualization aren't rituals for relaxation. They are ways of retuning the dial. They move your nervous system out of habitual states and into unfamiliar ones. They soften the cognitive loops that reinforce linear perception. You also begin to notice microshifts, a phrase that sticks in your head. A flash of insight that feels out of place. A sudden intuitive nudge. These are signs the dial is adjusting. These are frequencies from a different layer of perception trying to break through. Once the dial starts to move, you'll feel disoriented. Old thoughts won't stick. Old motivations fade. People who matched your former frequency feel distant. This is not regression. It's recalibration. This tuning process becomes self-reinforcing. The more you align your perception with expanded frequencies, the more your environment reflects those changes. You'll notice new opportunities appear. You'll feel drawn to different people. You'll speak differently, move differently, even remember differently. The world hasn't changed. Your station has. Next, we will unpack the mechanics of your brain's perceptual filtering system. You'll learn how it deletes, distorts, and limits the vast majority of data available to you, and how to consciously reprogram that filter to allow in far more than you currently realize. The average human brain processes billions of bits of information per second. Yet only a tiny fraction ever reaches your conscious awareness. The rest is discarded. Not because it's irrelevant, but because your filter has been programmed to ignore it. That filter is the gatekeeper of your experience. It determines what enters your perception and what gets edited out. It shapes how you interpret reality, how you remember events, and how you define what's possible. At the center of this filter is a neurological system called the reticular activating system, or RAS. It sits at the base of your brainstem, and its job is to regulate your state of arousal and focus. But more than that, it acts like a sorting mechanism. It decides what gets through to your conscious mind and what stays hidden in the noise. Here's how it works. The RAS is trained to prioritize information that matches your dominant beliefs, expectations, and recent focus. If you believe you're unlucky, the RAS filters in proof of misfortune. If you're obsessed with a specific car, you suddenly start seeing it everywhere. That car was always there. You just weren't tuned to it. This filtering isn't neutral. It's biased toward whatever mental framework you've been reinforcing. That means perception is not a window to reality. It's a window to your programming. When people say they feel stuck or lost, it's often because their RAS is caught in a loop. It's filtering the same categories of information over and over. It becomes blind to alternatives. You don't just miss new opportunities. You literally cannot see them. To change this, you need to hack the filter. The first step is disrupting your automatic thought patterns. Thought repetition wires the RAS. If you're always thinking about what's wrong, unsafe, or unreachable, your brain tunes in to matching data. Start introducing new questions instead of affirmations. The brain responds more powerfully to inquiry than to instruction. Ask questions like, what am I not seeing right now? What signal is trying to reach me that I'm filtering out? What outcome would feel unfamiliar, but aligned? Each question creates an opening in the filter. It destabilizes the automatic loop. The second step is emotional reconditioning. Your brain prioritizes emotionally charged information. So if your strongest emotional associations are linked to pain, failure, or threat, that's what your RAS will spotlight. To shift this, you need to start pairing emotional charge with expanded perceptions. Use visualization and embodiment to generate intense emotional responses tied to new patterns. Don't just think a better thought. Feel the new outcome in your body. The more emotional weight it carries, the more the filter locks onto it. Third, expand your sensory awareness. The filter isn't just mental, it's sensory. Most people are visually dominant, but multidimensional data often enters through subtle channels. Bodily sensations, auditory frequencies, spatial awareness. Practice shifting sensory dominance. Spend a day focusing only on what you hear, another day on touch, another on spatial cues. This retrains the RAS to pull data from broader sources. Next is novelty exposure. The brain's filter gets lazy in repetitive environments. Introduce controlled novelty. Rearrange your space. Change your route. Speak to people you wouldn't normally engage. The moment the brain detects unfamiliar input, the filter opens wider to process the change. Finally, use silence. The RAS is sensitive to internal noise. Constant internal dialogue creates clutter. When you engage in deep stillness, you reduce static. This allows higher frequency data to rise into perception, data that usually gets buried beneath thought. So what kinds of multidimensional data are you missing? You're missing subtle intuitive cues, emotional textures in conversations, timeline probabilities hidden in choice points, resonant fields in physical environments. You're missing access to alternate realities that already contain the solutions you're looking for. When the filter begins to widen, life starts to feel surreal. You'll notice things you've never seen. You'll feel truth in your body before your brain catches up. You'll start receiving insights that seem to arrive from nowhere. But they're not coming from nowhere. They've always been present. You've just tuned your filter to receive them. This isn't about overwhelming the senses. It's about precision. When your filter is refined, you can direct it like a laser, tuning into information that matches your highest alignment and bypassing the static of fear and habit. Next, we will explore something stranger and far more personal, the concept of consciousness entanglement, and how your intuitive signals may be messages from another version of you operating in a parallel timeline. There are moments when guidance arrives from somewhere beyond logic. A clear inner voice, a flash of knowing, a decision made with total confidence, without analysis, without deliberation. You weren't guessing, you were receiving, and that signal may not have come from your past. It may have come from another version of you, one that already walked the path you're just beginning to sense. Consciousness is not isolated. It's entangled. You are not a single, fixed identity locked into one timeline. You are a node in a much larger network, a network of selves, across possibilities, across variations, across dimensions. And these versions of you are not just metaphysical concepts. They are energetically real, and they are accessible through entanglement. Entangled minds are not bound by space or time. Just as entangled particles can affect each other instantly regardless of distance, entangled versions of you can exchange information across timelines. These exchanges often arrive as intuition, déjà vu, gut feelings, or fully formed insights that seem to bypass linear thinking. This isn't imagination. This is quantum resonance between timelines. Think of it like tuning forks. Each version of you vibrates with a specific energetic frequency, based on your choices, beliefs, and identity. When two frequencies are similar enough, they begin to resonate. You start picking up fragments, data packets, emotional impressions, ideas from the alternate version of yourself that aligns closely with your current vibration. This explains why you sometimes feel a pull toward a different life, a version of you who made different decisions. That pull is not fantasy. It's a bleed-through from an entangled counterpart. And if you begin to attune to that signal consciously, you can exchange information more clearly and use it to refine your direction. Let's break this down. Every decision you make spawns energetic branches. When you turn left instead of right, choose silence instead of speaking, walk away instead of staying, those micro-decisions don't just vanish. They create variations. And each variation contains a version of you who continued in that direction. These versions do not vanish. They remain active in the quantum field, exploring the possibilities your current path didn't take. And because all versions are entangled through a shared core frequency, your consciousness, you have access to the data they're generating. This is not science fiction. This is pattern recognition across parallel pathways. Many intuitive impressions you experience are not your subconscious working alone. They are signals from an entangled version of you offering information from a different vantage point. This is especially true when facing major decisions. You may suddenly feel clarity that seems to come from nowhere. In truth, it's coming from a timeline where the consequences of the decision have already played out. To receive these signals more clearly, you must stabilize your inner state. Turbulence scrambles the connection. The more coherent your mind-body field becomes, the more bandwidth you have to pick up entangled signals. This is where practices like meditation, conscious breath, and emotional coherence come into play. They aren't spiritual accessories. They are tuning mechanisms. They align your vibrational state with higher bandwidths of perception. Once aligned, you begin to receive with precision. You'll recognize thoughts that feel foreign yet familiar, emotions that don't match your current situation but carry insight, imagery that appears suddenly linked to events you haven't experienced, yet somehow understand. These are transmissions. Your job isn't to judge them, it's to feel their resonance. You'll know when it's your own entangled self versus outside influence. The data feels layered with a strange familiarity, as if you've already lived it. There's a depth to it, not like a voice shouting, more like a magnetic pull from beneath the surface. Sometimes, entangled signals arrive as flashes of fear or resistance. You may feel an irrational sense of warning before making a choice. This isn't always anxiety. It can be caution from a version of you who made that choice and paid a cost. That emotional echo is being transmitted as a warning across dimensions. But these transmissions aren't always serious. Sometimes they guide you toward alignment, a sudden desire to change direction, a strong draw toward someone you barely know, a wave of inspiration that pulls you into new territory. These moments often coincide with your energetic field syncing to a future version of yourself already embodying that outcome. This is the path of accelerated integration. You no longer have to learn everything through linear experience. You can synchronize with entangled selves who've already processed the lessons and carry the insight. You skip the trial. You receive the imprint. Now, some may ask, why don't we experience this all the time? Because most perception is locked into local processing. The filter you learn to rely on logic, memory, sensory data can't access entangled bandwidths. It has to be bypassed, not suppressed. Bypassed through coherent awareness, intentional stillness, and refined emotional state. When you operate from clarity, not chaos, the signal sharpens. You don't need rituals to connect with these versions of yourself. You need resonance, clarity of intention, openness without expectation, and most of all, trust in your internal intelligence. You already know how to do this. You've done it before. Flashes of knowing, moments of inexplicable certainty. The only difference now is that you're bringing it into conscious focus. Next, we will move into applied practice. You'll learn exact techniques to expand your perception, including specific exercises designed to shift your awareness into higher dimensional access and to recognize when the quantum mind is awake. Expanding your perception is not about effort. It's about precision. It's about working with the tools of awareness, attention, stillness, focus, sensation, until they become instruments of access rather than mechanisms of survival. To wake up the quantum mind, you don't need new beliefs. You need new habits of perception. These exercises are designed to do exactly that. Each one acts as a pressure release on your default filter. When practiced consistently, they shift your awareness into a broader, more nonlinear configuration, one that can access multidimensional data with clarity and stability. Let's begin with exercise 1, sensory inversion. For 1 full hour, choose a location, indoors or outdoors, and move through it as though you are perceiving it for the very first time. Engage your senses in reverse order. Start with sound, then touch, then smell, then sight. This reversal confuses the brain's standard patterning and disrupts your automated recognition loops. You'll begin to notice textures in sound, weight in space, and energetic impressions you would normally overlook. The longer you sustain this reversal, the more your inner vision starts to activate. Exercise 2, timeline dilation. Select a single moment in your day, an ordinary activity like making tea or walking through a doorway. Before you do it, pause completely. Imagine slowing time around you. Feel each millisecond as its own field. Move through the moment deliberately, as if it contained layers of meaning. Afterward, sit in stillness and record any imagery, emotions, or spontaneous thoughts. These micropauses create perceptual rupture points where nonlinear awareness can break through. Exercise 3, overlay recognition. Twice a day, at random intervals, close your eyes in any location and ask, what else is happening here that I haven't noticed? Hold that question without looking for an answer. Let images, feelings, or physical sensations rise. Do this with zero expectation. Over time, your awareness will begin to detect subtle layers, emotional imprints, intuitive cues, or even timeline echoes. This trains you to recognize overlays without needing to believe in them first. Exercise 4, dual perception tracking. Throughout the day, split your attention between your outer world and your inner state simultaneously. Notice how the external moment mirrors or diverges from your internal tone. Track these pairs without analysis. Just observe the connection. This creates a feedback loop that strengthens the bridge between your conscious mind and your quantum processing layer. Exercise 5, future self-calibration. At the start of each day, sit in stillness for 5 minutes and call forward the energetic frequency of the most aligned version of yourself available in the field. Do not imagine what they're doing. Tune to what they're feeling. Then spend the day observing how that internal frequency alters your behavior, attention, and perception. You are syncing your awareness to an alternate version of yourself already holding expanded data. Exercise 6, frequency logging. Before sleep, write down 5 experiences from the day that felt off frequency. Moments where your environment, emotions, or interactions felt discordant or out of alignment. Then, write 5 that felt precise, resonant, or high frequency. This trains your brain to build a vocabulary around perception beyond surface-level judgment. It also builds pattern recognition around resonance. Exercise 7, zero input reset. Once per week, spend 2 hours with zero input, no phone, no conversation, no reading, no music. Sit in stillness or walk without intention. The goal is not silence. The goal is to reduce incoming data to allow deeper signals to surface. Your quantum mind thrives in absence, not in distraction. These are not rituals. They are recalibration tools. The more consistently you apply them, the more you begin to notice your perception shifting automatically. You'll enter environments and feel overlays instantly. You'll begin to sense when time is stretching or compressing. You'll notice when your body responds to non-local data, and you'll begin trusting it. This is how perception evolves, not in grand leaps, but in practiced attention. Your reality will begin to reflect this shift. Synchronicities will become precise. Intuition will replace anxiety. Decisions will feel inevitable. And most importantly, your experience of self will begin to dissolve its former boundaries. You are not learning to be intuitive. You are unlearning the blockages that buried your perception under noise. Next, we will push into even stranger terrain. Reverse time manifestation. You'll explore how your future state may already be sending signals backward, and how to work with time as a malleable perceptual tool. Your future is not waiting for you. It's already active, already vibrating, already transmitting. You are not moving toward it in a straight line. You are aligning with it or deflecting from it based on the quality of your perception. And here's the paradox that unlocks a new layer of power. Your future is not just a destination. It's an influence, one that reaches backward through the structure of time to shape your current experience. Reverse time manifestation is the process of receiving and responding to those signals. It's based on a premise supported by both quantum theory and direct human experience. That time is not linear, and that information can move bidirectionally across it. Not metaphorically, literally. Certain interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that what happens now can be influenced by what has not yet occurred. This is not abstract physics. This is perceptual mechanics. And you are already participating in it, whether you're aware of it or not. Let's start with the concept of retrocausality. In certain quantum experiments, the act of observation in the present appears to affect the behavior of particles in the past. This suggests that information can be transferred backward along the timeline, not in contradiction to causality but in expansion of it. Now apply that to consciousness. Your mind is not locked inside this moment. It's a non-local field, stretched across multiple potential states, some of which exist ahead of your current time perception. When you receive an intuitive prompt that seems to come from nowhere, a pull toward a specific decision, a sudden sense of clarity, it may be your future state broadcasting back to you. Your job is not to create the future. Your job is to become a clear enough receiver to detect what has already formed in a different segment of time. Here's how it works. Your future self, a version of you who has already embodied the desire, learned the lesson, navigated the obstacle, is sending signals backward through consciousness. These signals often arrive as emotional tones, gut instincts, or persistent images. They bypass logic. They're not constructed. They're received. When your current state is calm, present, and coherent, these signals come through clearly. When you're anxious, distracted, or overthinking, the signal gets scrambled. This is why manifestation often feels effortless when you're in flow. Because flow is a state of temporal openness, where the past, present, and future become porous. Information moves freely. You feel ahead of time. Because you are. Reverse time manifestation is not about forcing outcomes. It's about collapsing the delay between signal and reception. The shorter the delay, the more immediate your alignment. The more immediate your alignment, the faster reality reflects the signal. So how do you begin working with this? Step 1. Develop sensitivity to future signals. Begin tracking when you feel sudden shifts in clarity, knowing, or attraction. Instead of brushing them off, pause. Ask internally, is this from a future state? Don't try to answer. Just feel the resonance. These moments may arise while journaling, walking, speaking, or during transitions, right as you're waking or falling asleep. These liminal states are prime reception windows. Step 2. Imprint feedback loops. When you act on a future signal and it proves accurate, whether externally or emotionally, mark it. Reinforce it. This creates a feedback loop in your perception, making it more likely to detect future signals with clarity and trust. Step 3. Create anchoring rituals for future alignment. Begin your day by projecting your awareness into a specific version of yourself 6 months ahead. Focus not on what they have, but how they feel. What does their emotional signature carry? Then, treat that frequency as a GPS broadcast and begin to match it now. By aligning your present state with the emotional resonance of a future version, you reduce timeline interference. You're no longer chasing an outcome. You're syncing with it. Step 4. Remove identity lag. Identity lag occurs when your behavior and beliefs still orbit a past self. That lag creates distortion, which prevents reception of reverse signals. To eliminate this, consistently ask, is this decision aligned with the identity I'm becoming or the one I'm shedding? Act accordingly. This speeds up manifestation because your internal alignment stops contradicting the signal. Step 5. Listen backward during resistance. When you're stuck, confused, or blocked, reverse time perception becomes essential. Ask, what has my future already figured out about this? Then still your mind. Drop into the body. Notice where clarity pulls you. You are not finding the answer. You are tuning to the signal that already holds it. Your body often receives the message before your brain. A shift in breath, a sudden lightness, a sense of warmth or release. These are somatic confirmations that the signal has landed. Next, understand the delay factor. Linear perception creates the illusion of delay between desire and result. But the delay isn't in manifestation. It's in reception. When you begin to feel the result in advance, with no contradiction in belief or emotion, the delay collapses. The field reorganizes around your coherence. Not your intention, not your effort, your coherence. Manifestation through reverse time alignment becomes less about doing and more about matching. Your timeline is not a straight road. It's a set of probability waves. The version you experience is the one you align with most consistently. The rest are still active in the field. And your future states are constantly broadcasting information about how to shift into them. Reverse time manifestation is not manipulation. It's restoration. It returns you to a natural rhythm of guidance that was always available, but drowned out by linear noise. Next, we will expose the malleable nature of the physical world itself, and how your perception doesn't just interact with reality. It bends it. Reality is not solid. It appears solid. It behaves solidly under certain conditions. But at its foundation, it is plastic, moldable, responsive, and fluid. And the tool that shapes it is your perception. At the subatomic level, all matter exists as probability. Electrons do not have fixed locations. They appear as clouds of potential until observed. The moment you look, the waveform collapses into a specific state. That collapse is not a passive event. It's a co-creation between observer and field. Your perception chooses the version of reality you experience. Most people assume this is abstract, reserved for particles and laboratory equipment. But the implications stretch far beyond physics. If your observation collapses probability into reality, then every moment of attention is an act of construction. Now consider what kind of perception you're projecting into the world. Are you observing with doubt, with fear, with certainty, with receptivity? Each emotional lens bends the waveform differently. Each energetic state selects a version of reality that matches it. This is not about being positive. It's about being precise. Precision of perception means using your attention deliberately, like a sculptor uses tools, not to force the field, but to shape it through resonance. Let's look at this in everyday life. You enter a room expecting judgment. Your nervous system prepares for attack. You unconsciously close off. That frequency then triggers subtle signals. Your tone shifts, your eyes harden, your posture tightens. Those cues elicit matching responses from others. They confirm your fear, not because it was fated, but because it was broadcast. Now reverse it. You enter with neutrality, curiosity, even quiet confidence. Your field shifts. Your perception highlights warmth, safety, or alignment. That field reshapes the dynamic. Same room, different version of it. Your observation didn't just interpret the moment. It bent it. At the macro level, this plasticity of reality reveals itself through recurring patterns. People who expect rejection find it. Those who expect connection generate it. And beyond belief, it's perception that sustains the cycle. Plastic reality responds not to what you want, but to what you perceive as real. To reshape your world, you don't need to chase outcomes. You need to change how you're observing. This begins with tracking the way you describe your experience. Language is a carrier of perception. If you consistently use words of limitation, I can't, that's just how it is, you are hardening a flexible field. You're locking in a version of reality that was never fixed. Refine your language. Let it become a mirror of new perception, not a report of the old. Next, expand sensory precision. Perception is not just visual, it's vibrational. Practice noticing the subtext in situations. How do spaces feel before they speak? What changes in the room when you shift your internal state? Your perception doesn't just receive reality. It imprints onto it. Reality is like clay. The more focused your awareness, the more influence you exert over the shape. The less focused, the more random the sculpture. One of the most overlooked tools for bending reality is neutrality. Most people attempt to shift their world with intensity, forceful desire, hyperfocus, or anxious control. But intensity often constricts the field. Neutrality opens it. When you observe without grasping, when you witness without needing, you become magnetic. The field responds to that presence. It flows toward clarity, not desperation. This is why grounded individuals often seem to bend circumstances around them without effort. Their perception is steady, their field coherent, and reality reorganizes around coherence like metal shavings around a magnet. So how do you train this plastic influence? Begin each day by setting perception, not intention. Ask, what version of reality am I choosing to see today? Then behave accordingly. Refuse to react to surface appearances. Train your attention to scan beneath events for resonance. Look for what's emerging, not just what's visible. Use microperception to disrupt patterns. Pause during a reaction. Ask, what would change if I observed this from a higher resolution? That shift alone bends the experience. Create daily proof of flexibility. Test the field. Ask to be shown evidence of a malleable reality. Stay alert. The evidence arrives when perception is open, not when it's skeptical. Replace expectation with observation. Let the field reveal itself instead of telling it what to become. Watch. Interpret less. Receive more. Your perception doesn't just track reality. It shapes it. The sooner you treat your attention as a tool of creation, the sooner your environment starts reflecting that truth. Next, we will push into the inner world and dismantle one of the final illusions, the idea that you are the one doing the perceiving. You'll explore the silent witness behind the lens, and how that shift unlocks your deepest access point of transformation. There is a moment in expanded awareness when the entire framework of identity begins to dissolve. It's not dramatic, it's subtle. A shift like pulling back a curtain and realizing the actor was never the one in control of the scene. Something else was watching, quietly, constantly, without judgment. This is the observer within. Not your personality, not your thoughts, not your emotions, but the silent awareness behind all of it. You've spent your life believing you are the one thinking your thoughts, feeling your emotions, making decisions. But the moment you begin to observe those processes without attachment, you discover something radical. They are not you. They are phenomena happening in your field of awareness. And you are the field, not the content within it. This shift is not philosophical. It is functional. The moment you recognize that you are not your mind, but the observer of the mind, you access a new level of perceptual power. You become untangled from the loops. The thoughts still come, but they are witnessed. The emotions still rise, but they pass through. The events still occur, but they no longer stick to the self in the same way. Most people are fused to their identity structures. When anger arises, they are angry. When doubt appears, they are the doubter. But once you begin training the internal observer, something changes. You begin to say, anger is moving through the system, not, I am angry. That gap between awareness and content is where liberation begins. The observer cannot be threatened, cannot be praised, It does not age. It does not argue. It watches. It receives. It knows. And as your awareness rests more frequently in the observer, your perception expands exponentially. You are no longer interpreting reality through the filters of identity. You are perceiving from the source of presence itself. So what happens when you begin to operate from this center? First, time slows down. When you are identified with thoughts, time races. One mental loop leads to another. Reaction follows reaction. But the observer exists outside of time. It sees everything in stillness. From that stillness, clarity emerges. Second, judgment softens. You stop needing to label every event as good or bad, right or wrong. You begin to see each moment as a movement of energy, neutral, meaningful, but not binary. This frees your perception from the roller coaster of reactivity. Third, you stop chasing control. The observer doesn't manipulate. It allows. And from that allowance, power arises. Because you're no longer wasting energy trying to force reality to match an internal script. You're aligned with what is, and from that alignment, you influence more powerfully. The observer is not passive. It's precise. It notices microsignals, shifts in tone, energetic changes in people, intuitive nudges, long before the analytical mind catches up. As this presence deepens, your emotional regulation transforms. You begin to see every emotion as data, not identity. Sadness becomes a wave, not a prison. Fear becomes a teacher, not a dictator. Joy becomes a signal, not an escape. The nervous system follows. When you rest in the observer, your physiological state settles. You move from sympathetic activation to parasympathetic coherence. This doesn't just make you calmer. It makes you clearer. The noise fades. The signal sharpens. And the world begins to look different. Because now you're not just seeing through the lens of personality. You're seeing from awareness itself. Here's the shift to remember. You are not a mind inside a body. You are awareness experiencing the body, the mind, and the world all simultaneously. This isn't spiritual abstraction. It's perceptual training. So how do you access the observer state more consistently? Begin with micropauses. Throughout the day, interrupt your inner dialogue and simply ask, who is noticing this? Don't answer. Just hold the question. Let your awareness drop back behind the experience. This moment of turning inward is the doorway. Next, practice witnessing without labeling. When a thought arises, don't analyze it. Just see it. When an emotion moves through, don't cling or resist. Just feel it. The more you do this, the more your awareness stabilizes in the observer. It's not about escaping experience. It's about seeing clearly that you are not the experience. You are the one experiencing it. Eventually, this state becomes baseline. Not a place you visit, but a place you operate from. And from here, your perception becomes multidimensional by default. Because you are no longer locked into the identity-based filter that shrinks your awareness to survival, comparison, and attachment. You begin to see patterns in motion, possibilities unfolding, paths opening that were previously invisible. Not because the world changed, but because the observer does not filter reality through fear. Next, we will expand this awareness even further into what happens when you stop perceiving from a single vantage point and begin accessing reality from every angle at once. Linear awareness sees only one path, one version of events, one layer of meaning. But you are not limited to linear awareness. You can perceive from multiple angles simultaneously, across time, across energy, across perspective. This isn't theory. It's a perceptual capacity, and it activates when your awareness expands beyond identity and into coherence. 360 degrees perception is the ability to view reality from all sides at once. Not just what is happening, but what it means, where it's going, what its alternatives are, and how it echoes in subtle dimensions. It's like seeing a sphere instead of a flat surface. Most people operate in two dimensions, what's visible and what they think about what's visible. But there's more. There's the emotional resonance. the energetic tone, the timeline pattern, the symbolic structure, the frequency it carries, the message it transmits. 360 degrees perception lets you read the full picture. When you develop this capacity, your decision-making evolves. You no longer choose based on fear or fantasy. You choose from clarity, because you can see what each decision opens, what it closes, and how it reverberates across the field. This form of awareness is not chaotic. It's organized. It's holographic. It processes more information not by speeding up, but by deepening. So how do you access it? Start by training multipositional perception. This means stepping outside your own lens and consciously imagining how a moment feels from different perspectives. Not opinions, energetic positions. When in conflict, pause and sense. How does this feel from my standpoint? How does it feel from theirs, without judgment? What does the situation feel like from a neutral third point? What would it look like from above? From after it's resolved? The more you do this, the more your perception becomes layered. You no longer react from the surface. You read from the depth. Next, activate panoramic awareness. In any moment, pause and ask, what else is true here? Hold the question open. Scan not with thoughts, but with awareness. Let other angles appear, visual, emotional, symbolic. This begins to stretch your field. As your field expands, you gain access to cross-time perception. This means you begin sensing echoes of the past and shadows of the future within the present. Not as fantasy, as texture. You walk into a room and feel the residue of a former argument, or the momentum of something forming. This is 360 degrees perception in real time. You also begin to decode the symbolic layer. Every moment carries more than just event data. Carries symbolic weight. A car stalling may be mechanical, or may mirror where your inner momentum is stuck. A stranger's comment may contain a message tailored to your current transition. The more you notice, the more these symbols organize into guidance. This is not magical thinking. It's multidimensional literacy. Eventually, your entire perceptual framework shifts. You don't just interpret events. You read fields. You don't just make choices. You scan timelines. You don't just react. You realign. 360 degrees perception removes the need for control, because it gives you access to context. And with context, flow becomes natural. You begin trusting your movement, not because you calculated the best path, but because you've perceived the path with the most alignment from all sides. Now here's the most important shift. 360 degrees perception isn't something you turn on in crisis. It's a way of living. It becomes your default. You walk into conversations tuned to multiple layers. You sense the energy beneath someone's words. You detect shifts in momentum before they manifest. You feel what is unsaid. You anticipate outcomes not from logic but from field coherence. And it all starts with expanding your point of view. Practice this. When facing a challenge, ask, what am I not seeing because I'm too close? What would this look like if I zoomed out 10x? If I were already through this, what would I say to myself now? These questions fracture the single-angle view and invite a wider frame. That frame is where the new data lives. As this becomes embodied, you'll notice something else. Time becomes less important, because perception is no longer bound to the next moment. You see the arc. You feel the shape. You read the momentum. This level of awareness cannot be faked. It must be trained, honed, grounded. But once it activates, you become a navigator not of thoughts but of the entire perceptual field. Next, we move to integration. You've accessed expanded awareness. You've felt quantum perception. Now it's time to live it, in the body, in your choices, and in the structure of daily life. There is a difference between knowing and living. One is awareness. The other is embodiment. You've explored the architecture of perception, how it shapes, filters, and bends your reality. You've witnessed the mechanics of multidimensional awareness, timeline feedback, and field-based decision-making. But insight without integration remains abstract. It becomes just another layer of mental stimulation, until it enters your life. Living the quantum way means shifting from occasional awareness to consistent embodiment. Not just accessing expanded perception during meditation or altered states, but applying it in conversation, in silence, in frustration, in love, in action. This is the real work. Quiet, subtle, powerful. Higher perception is not something you visit. It's a state you normalize. And once it's normalized, it becomes the new ground for how you experience, interpret, and influence your world. So how do you integrate this? You begin by replacing the question, how do I stay in this state? With, how do I live from this state even in complexity? The goal is not to maintain perfect clarity. It's to return to it faster and more fluidly each time you step out. That return point becomes your anchor. It becomes the center of gravity for how you live. Let's break this into principles, concrete structures to hold your expanded perception inside the rhythm of daily life. Principle 1. Presence before projection. When entering any experience, pause. Don't project assumptions, worries, or outcomes. Arrive fully. Feel your body. Tune to the emotional texture of the moment. From here, respond not from old patterns, but from the reality that's actually unfolding. This short-circuits automatic perception and allows clarity to lead. Principle 2. Frequency over force. Stop trying to push outcomes. Start noticing what frequency you're holding in your body. Before a conversation, meeting, or task, ask, what frequency am I bringing into this? Shift your inner state first. Results will echo that change more reliably than any plan. Principle 3. Timelines are chosen, not chased. Every choice holds a timeline. When you choose from fear, you enter the version of reality that fear constructs. When you choose from coherence, alignment, and intuitive clarity, you enter the one that matches those traits. Begin tracking your choices not by how they look, but by how they feel vibrationally. Learn to sense the version of yourself that exists on the other side of each path. Principle 4. Reality reflects coherence. Your perception may expand, but if your internal field is scrambled, disconnected, reactive, unresolved, your life will mirror that dissonance. When you stabilize emotionally, somatically, and cognitively, reality bends to match. You no longer need to chase shifts. You become the frequency that magnetizes them. Principle 5. Patterns before problems. Stop treating obstacles as isolated. Start seeing them as indicators of recurring patterns. Is that moment of tension with your partner a new issue, or an echo of a looping perception? Is the financial block a real barrier, or a reflection of a deeper resonance? Pattern recognition removes drama and replaces it with insight. When you read patterns, you move with elegance instead of reaction. Principle 6. Integration happens in the body. Your mind might understand the principles of perception, but your body holds the charge. If your nervous system is still firing from trauma, no amount of conceptual clarity will stabilize your field. So regulate, move, ground. Use breath to interrupt the loop. Use stillness to recenter. Use sensation to process. The body is the portal. Train it, and your perception will remain clear under pressure. Principle 7. Create containers. Higher perception needs structure to stay consistent. Don't wait for spontaneous insight. Build space for it. This could be a morning practice, intentional journaling, conscious breathwork, regular sensory resets, or quantum state rituals. Make them non-negotiable. Let your life orbit your practice, not the other way around. Principle 8. Normalize the extraordinary. Synchronicity, telepathic connection, timelines converging, emotional downloads. These are not strange. They are normal expressions of an upgraded perceptual system. Stop questioning the miraculous. Start documenting it. Track the patterns. Build your evidence bank. Teach your subconscious that expanded perception is your new baseline. Principle 9. Clean energetic hygiene. You pick up emotional residue from environments, media, and relationships. Just as you clean your physical space, clean your energetic field. Practice regular clearing, breath, visualization, sound, nature, silence. The clearer your field, the sharper your perception. Principle 10. Practice presence under pressure. The real test of integrated perception is how you respond when compressed. In stress, conflict, uncertainty, pause, breathe, drop back into the observer. Expand your awareness to 360 degrees. See the moment, not just your reaction to it. Respond from the wider field. This is how perception translates into power. These principles aren't theory. They are scaffolding. Structure that supports expanded awareness in practical, embodied life. The more you operate this way, the more you shift into what some call the quantum way of being, not as a concept but as a lived, felt experience. In this mode, you begin to trust silence. You treat attention as sacred. You see every encounter as a mirror, every emotion as information, every moment as a field of layered data. You don't force. You align. You don't react. You read. You don't chase. You choose. You don't hope. You tune. From this state, manifestation becomes obvious. Intuition becomes steady. Reality becomes participatory. You become the field, no longer inside your mind, but moving as perception itself. No longer searching for insight, but living as insight. The quantum way is not about complexity. It's about elegance. Not about escaping reality, but learning how to see it fully across dimensions beyond time and through the clarity of a coherent inner world. You've always had access. You just forgot where to listen. Now you know. Let this not be the end of an idea. Let it be the calibration point from which you live forward, clear, expanded, tuned, and unshakably aware. This is your invitation to stop perceiving life from the edge and begin living it from the center. You are not the experiencer. You are the experience becoming aware of itself. Live from that truth. And everything changes.